This is Duke University.
I'm Kathy Clark, a professor here at the Center for the Advancement of Social Entrepreneurship, and it is my great pleasure to bring the topic of our closing plenary here to you guys. Many of you in the room know that we have been working for a very long time around, the issue that has threaded through this conference that Seth started with this morning, which is what is the role of business in creating social change. And through the last 20 years of working with mission-driven businesses, I personally have seen again and again the undying passion and commitment that many CEOs and managers have to this kind of activity, and also some of the really substantive constraints in the marketplace that make it difficult for them to do their work. So I guess almost 10 years ago now, maybe 8 years ago now, a bunch of us came together around the idea of trying to lift some of those constraints in the marketplace and declare a new kind of business, which was subsequently called B corporations. And there have been a tremendous amount of people in the US and now around the globe working to refine and build this community of mission-driven businesses and give them a platform and give them a definition and give them legal forms and give them support. And I couldn't be more pleased to welcome several of the pioneering B Corps, two actually here in North Carolina in our backyard, and one, a Dookie who is on the phone and is going to join us in a conversation about how the different kinds of corporations that have these commitments can actually do their jobs and what innovation means inside this new kind of corporation. So we're going to have two panelists live today. We have Kevin Trapani of the Redwoods groups. We have Maria Kingery of Southern Energy, and we have Paul Sansone of Better World Books on the phone. So please join me in welcoming them to the stage.
Thank you all for being here. We know how devastating it is to face the threat of a quarter inch of snow in Durham. Actually, this one might be ice. I'm really just kidding. So thanks for being here. And it sounds like this has been a really rich conversation, which I think Kathy really began last evening, talking about Greg, but more talking about Greg's ideas. And so no better way to kind of finish than really to chat a little bit about what has been accomplished, has manifested in a few businesses that you see represented in front of you. So let's start with the technology. I guess I can't look at Paul, right? Because that's the largest you've ever been, Paul.
You look great.
I'm bringing in my Duke Blue Devil head. Can you guys see that?
All right.
So happy to see that because I happened to grab a Carolina Blue binder today. Anyway, so Paul, you can hear me okay, right?
Yeah, I can hear you good, Kevin.
All right. So we are going to run through in about a half hour kind of three phases of things. One, real quickly, we'll each describe our businesses to you, 30,000 feet. The point being that there is really no limitation as to what kind of business can operate for social good, and we want to be able to demonstrate that. So that's kind of point number one. Point number two, we're going to ask a couple of questions about how we run our businesses, what's similar about the language of social entrepreneurship in terms of what we have to get done. And then we want to invite you all to ask questions because that's the best part of it. So hopefully we get through the first part in just a few minutes and then ask you all to participate. So Paul, let's start with you. Sorry. Let's start with you, Paul, and describe Better World Books for us in terms of the business model and how things work.
Yeah, great. So thanks for having me virtually. Better World Books is a social enterprise that's about 11 years old. We were founded in 2002. by 3 Notre Dame students who ran a campus book drive for a literacy partner and raised funds for that partner. And now it's scaled to a company that's got 3 locations worldwide. And this past year, we did about $63 million of revenue with about 400 employees. The company has been a founding B Corporation since 2008. We have, to date, either reused or recycled 123 million books that did not have a life beyond either reusing or recycling them. We have had 11 million books actually donated to folks that need books, either our nonprofit literacy partners or library systems. And we've raised $15 million for libraries and literacy initiatives worldwide. So the company has been a social enterprise from day one, and so it's in our DNA to do well and do good at the same time.
Wonderful. Thank you, Paul. We're going to come back to the concept of doing well and doing good at the same time. Maria, let's talk about Southern Energy Management and what the business is.
Okay, so Southern Energy Management is a business. We do energy efficiency and solar work. We started our business in 2001. My husband is my business partner, so we have truly made a life around making a difference. And the difference that we've chosen to make is to help to improve the way people make and use energy. We know that energy is one of the greatest challenges facing humankind, and it is just a joy for us to be able to get up every day and do this work. We do work for all different types of folks, from homeowners to builders to commercial entities, with the overarching theme that runs through all of helping to make buildings more energy efficient and help to produce their own power. And we've gone everywhere from, we started in our living room, it was just Bob and me, to we've had as many as, about 200 people that we were paying at one time, up and down the East Coast, constructing very large utility scale solar projects. Divested that part of the business last year, in 2000, actually now it was the year before last, mid-2012. And part of the reason was really based on our B Corp values and what we wanted to accomplish in the world. We felt like working on utility scale, while that was really important and critical when we started, because nobody else was doing it. We sort of pioneered utility scale in the Southeast. By the time, in 2012, there were lots of other entrants into the marketplace, and we didn't feel like for what we wanted to accomplish in the world and for our values, having people, living away from home, for example, for weeks or months at a time, and those types of things really was consistent. So we have our B Corp values, and we've been a B Corp since 2009, just missed being a founding B Corp. Still mad about that, but at any rate, I'll get over it. Yeah, I know, we'll get over it. I'm over it, But at any rate, it really has very much guided our business and major decisions, the way we think about what we're doing in the world. So very, very pleased to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
So Maria mentioned 2012 and some organizational changes, and we're going to talk a little bit today about how we handle volatility and remain true to our values and our mission. I think you call it the solar coaster.
Absolutely.
Right. So
raise your hands.
Right,
it's fine.
because it isn't true that as long as your mission is good and pure, that there will be smooth sailing. And so we need to bring skills and appropriate discipline to surviving in difficult times. So I want to talk about that a little bit.
Excellent.
I'll tell you quickly a little bit of the story of the Redwoods group. By the way, the person who's, so we got Paul not here physically. We've got one person not here at all because I guess he's in his 10th day of no power outside of Philadelphia. Is Bart Houlihan, who's one of the co-founders of B Lab, which is kind of the architect of the kind of organizations we are. And I'm sorry that Bart's not with us for two reasons. First, it's wonderful to be with Bart. He's got a great mind and all that stuff. And secondly, he's a better moderator than I am. So, but I'll tell you a little bit of the story of Redwoods. And the story with Redwoods starts with data. And so this will sound like I'm starting in an unusual place. But 1 in 10 kids in the United States will be sexually abused by the time they turn 18. That's what the data tells us. There are 3,500 people who drown in the United States each year. 1,500 of them are kids, between a third and a half are kids who will drown in a pool that has a lifeguard on the deck, which is completely counterintuitive. So in 1997, a group of us who had been blessed to be a part of the YMCA movement and also blessed to work for some really smart people in the property casualty insurance business decided to start an organization that would serve child-serving organizations and use the kind of data that we have about how kids get hurt to help our customers change their operations in such a way that kids are more likely to be safe. And so, as an example, I would tell you that in 1997 to 2000 or so, 13 kids died by drowning each year in YMCA pools, and in the last 3 years, 1 has, as a result of the work that we've done to help lifeguards behave differently on pool decks. So there is great power in using data to do good, and that's how our model works. We call it a virtuous cycle. We spend a lot of time looking at the data. We share that data and change operations. We save lives, and we look deeper at the data, and that's just kind of how it works. So I want to circle back, and Maria, I want to start with you. You have a wonderful mission, a great purpose, a great group of employees that you've engaged deeply. And I want to talk about 2 things. One, what's the key to engaging employees behind mission and purpose? And secondly, I want you to talk a little bit about how you were able to lead that community through the volatility in 2012.
Yeah, well, thank you. Those are both really big questions. You know, the engaging employees, we talk a lot about employee engagement. I mean, the main thing is transparency. I mean, that's the biggest piece, is being honest with folks and explaining to them, you know, setting clear targets, data, you know, having a shared language and a shared goal and a shared vision. I mean, all the things that I know you guys talk about in business school and the foundational elements. But the key is really bringing those things to life. And so, for example, we've used our B Corp score as a way to do that and to share, you know, their different sections and where are the sections that our team members can actually deeply engage and be accountable for helping to improve that score. And so we're just rolling out across the whole company currently a carbon counting exercise. We've always been, because of what we do for a living, we fundamentally believe that climate change is obviously something that we can have an impact on, again, through leadership, if not through being the ones that, you know, help avoid all the carbon. But our team members, we've had in the past people who have gone and they've gone to different team members and said, okay, and gathered that data. We're now going to make every team member responsible for reporting that data and driving that messaging home to them. And then, of course, it goes up to, you know, the individual level, the team level, the company level, and then ultimately, you know, we are part of a much broader community. So for us, engagement is really about helping people to see how their individual contributions are, you know, much more impactful. This is actually Spread the Love Week for B Corp is running a program where they're asking all B Corps to talk about, actually ask for, you know, can you have a team meeting and talk about B Corporation and what it means to be a B Corporation. We were not able to do that this week, but I did spend some time this morning. I intended to do it Friday, but I'm afraid, you know, with this 1/4 inch ice, we might not be able to get there, and I didn't want to miss the opportunity. Went around and gave everybody little buttons and videotaped them, asking them what it meant. What does it mean to you? And totally put them on the spot, which they didn't like, you know, but it's real. Mm-hmm. And so really having real conversations. And you know, that's my way of answering the second question too. So Kevin very, very aptly got the what we call this, you know, innovation cycle, whatever it is, in the utility industry. I mean, we're part of something, again, much bigger, but it's a solar coaster. And, you know, it's good, it's bad, it's, you know, regulatory changes. I mean, we're constantly having to adapt and on the fly, you know, agile development. I mean, we were doing it before we knew what it was called. And it's that having the foundation and constantly communicating with people and sharing the news, even when it's bad. And you know, when we made the decision to divest our utility scale solar division, that was really tough for a lot of people because half of our team went to work for another company. Now, you know, what we said was we truly believe we put them, they were bought by a company, another local company, very values-driven, not a B Corp, but very values-driven company, whose CEO promised me, I'll take care of your people. And so that was the commitment he made to me, and you know, that I made to our team members. And it's, you know, we had a gathering just last month where we invited everybody to come back together and sort of celebrate where we are. So, you know, I mean, it's things, treating people like people, Kevin, at the end of the day, and honoring what it is that they're here to do.
What I loved about how Maria and Bob approached that period of time was the decisions weren't clear at any point. And they never got to the place where it was black and white. They said, our values are going to kind of speak to us as we go through the process. They didn't choose the easiest sale. They didn't choose the sale that was the most financially advantageous at the moment. But at the same time, they chose a sale that allowed them to rebuild the company in a slightly different image. And so one of the things that's required in being a B Corp, and Paul, I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about supply chain management and some of those kinds of things, because one of the things that's involved in being a for-benefit company is that you have to balance all kinds of often competing interests. In traditional commerce, we don't really have to balance them. Profit is king. Whatever we do that's going to maximize short-term value to the shareholders is what we kind of solve for in the algebra of traditional commerce. In for-benefit corporations, what's in the interest of employees and of the environment and of the community and of the shareholders and of the customers, those are all things that we have to kind of take into account. And frankly, it grows leaders like Maria, who find answers with a moral compass. And we'll talk more about that. But Paul, I'm interested because I know you all have been in situations many times where there are potentially competing interests or conflicting interests, particularly through the supply and distribution chain. I'd like you to talk a little bit about how you resolve those things, and maybe with an example or two.
Yeah, that's great, Kevin. Thanks. For Better World Books, we started again about 11 years ago and received books from a lot of different clients of ours. We had a business that was basically founded on the college textbook. And the book drives that were done on college campuses, we bridged into a business related to library systems because libraries had a systemic weeding and feeding problem of their own system. So they had a buildup of inventory of books that they didn't know how to dispose of. They either put them in landfills or disposed of them. We heard horror stories from librarians going to the dumpster at midnight, taking the books back and putting them in the dumpster because they didn't want the public to see them. Well, we had a systemic, scalable way to sell those books and monetize those books online. So we receive those books from library systems, and again, it's kind of a win-win. They've got to get rid of those books anyway, and our model has been built to scale to be able to sell those books online. The competing interest that you talk about, Kevin, is our desire to give them as much funding for literacy program as possible while balancing the needs of the organization to be sustainable over the long term. So we've constantly tweaked, our structure to make sure that we're providing them, multiple sets of returns to each of the stakeholders. So, for example, on the inventory management side, a library system might expend a lot of expense just to maintain those books that they end up not using anyway. So we save them cost on the expense side, we give them a revenue component on the back end, and we give them a transparent and mission-aligned way to dispose of their books. So again, balancing what happens to the stakeholder is key, and we've been trying to do that since our company's inception.
It's, again, resolving potentially conflicting priorities for the benefit of all. Paul, I want to come back to you on one point because you touched on it, and it's the last question I'm going to ask our folks, and then I'd like to invite questions from you all. What's the role of profit in running Better World Books?
Yeah, it's a great question. So again, as a B corporation, you take on the role of changing your articles of incorporation to include not just shareholders like Kevin talked about, you have to include stakeholders. So profit is a component of the various stakeholders that we serve. We do have traditional shareholders that own stock in the company. And we also have, again, the stakeholder component to balance out what mission impact we're making as a B corporation. You know, the role of profit is, you know, something that we all manage to as an executive team as much as we can from a sustainability standpoint. However, we still try to do things that feel right in decision making. For example, not only do we provide commissions to our nonprofit literacy partners and libraries, we also do independent grant writing for commissions that we receive on new books or other books that might not have a literacy source from the front end. So we add on to our mission component at the end of each fiscal year based upon how much revenue we've gotten from books that didn't come from a library system, for example. We constantly do mission trips with our employees. We just had a group of 8 folks that went over to Africa for 2 weeks to work on the ground with our nonprofit partners on their literacy mission. So again, it's a balance of what we have to do to provide return to our shareholder groups, as well as measuring that with impact against our stakeholder population. And we believe that, you know, profit's one of those components that we measure like any other corporation. But again, as a B Corp, we measure all of the mission impact and the sustainability impact as well.
Right. So one of a number of variables. Maria, would you follow on to that?
Yeah, so I'm sorry Bart's not here, because Bart came to visit me when we were at a particularly low point on the solar coaster. The solar coaster was in a trough. And I remember Bart and I was really struggling with this, you know, because we were going to have to make decisions that I didn't want to make. You know, we had built this cohesive team around this great mission, and everybody loved each other and loved what they did. That's one of our values, love what we do and love each other as well. And Bart said to me, look, and he told me a story, you know, about his own personal experience. And he said, no money, no mission. And it really struck me at that moment how by taking care of the business, I was taking care of the people, and how that had to evolve. And, you know, profitability is, we chose to be a for-profit business and not a nonprofit. By being a for-profit business, first of all, we have much more flexibility in the marketplace. I know you believe as well that we're helping to transform capitalism itself in some respects, and have that opportunity to do that. It's not a bad word, you know, and it's absolutely, you know, I'm a little skeptical about saying this publicly, but I've said it so many times, I might as well. You know, in my opinion, business sort of got us into a lot of the mess that we're in, and I think business can get us out. And I think it's a great opportunity, and I'm excited about being a part of it with others.
You bet. Yeah, I haven't said that publicly either today.
Okay, good.
I want to be clear about a couple things when it comes to profit, and I want to talk about for-profit as well as not-for-profit organizations. I don't care which you are, you still have to make a profit. Now, that doesn't mean I'm crazy, and if you're in the not-for-profit business, call it what you want. Call it a fund balance, fully fund depreciation, call it a reserve, a surplus. I couldn't care less. The fact is you have to take in more money than you give out, or you won't be here tomorrow to do your good work. Profit for a for-profit or not-for-profit organization, profit is a metric of sustainability. Mm-hmm. Now, excess profit is unnecessary and immoral, but adequate profit, meaning profit that provides enough for you to meet your obligations, not only in the short term, but the long term, meaning that fully funding a hedge against future volatility, which is essential for us and what takes down most businesses, not just well-meaning businesses. That's how you define adequacy of profit. Now, please understand that whether you're not-for-profit, for-profit, when you're trying to save the world, which is what we're all trying to do from our platform, whether it looks like an insurance organization or energy company or a book distributor, if you're trying to save the world, your work is really important. And you are going to compete for capital all over the place. So we think about financial capital, you compete for debt or equity if you're in the for-profit world, or you'll compete for philanthropic capital, financial capital, if you're in the nonprofit world, but you're also going to compete for the capital of ideas, human capital, intellectual capital. So we just lost a recruitment race for someone I love and would love to have had come to work for us this year. She knows who she is and now she's all embarrassed. However, I will tell you that, and so I don't know if we weren't quite good enough to win that recruitment or not, but I'm delighted with where she ended up. What I know is that if we try to recruit the best and the brightest, which is what we're trying to do all the time, if we are not financially sustainable, and people can see that because they can, well then we won't win in the marketplace of ideas. So we have to be financially sustainable in order to compete for whatever form of capital you want to talk about. And so monetizing our mission, not for profit or for profit, is an essential part of the balance that Paul talks about. And that's kind of, you know, lesson number one in social entrepreneurship. Bart said, no money, no mission.
Absolutely.
That's the other reason you wish Bart had been here, because I just took 5 minutes to say what Bart said in 3 weeks. So let me ask now, we've got 5, 6 minutes. Let me ask for questions from the floor, including for Paul, because he can hear you, or I'll repeat your question. It's not possible. We've said so many provocative things.
I know. I was going to say that's.
And there are microphones wandering around. So in the absence of a question from the floor, but I'm going to start calling on people.
I was going to say maybe we should ask them a question.
Relatively soon. Yeah.
Excellent.
There you go.
Thank you.
Right. The threat worked.
I'm curious if you could speak a little bit to sort of why there's a separation between business and other things people do, because to me the two are integrated.
I'm sorry, say it again.
There's sort of a distinction between some things are not a business, and I think when you're in pursuit of doing anything, it is a business. And so if you could speak a little bit to the separation that has occurred over time.
Wow. Paul, were you able to hear her question?
No, can you repeat it, Kevin? Thanks.
I can read his lips. I'll tell you what he said.
Yeah.
Paul, you're getting a little fuzzy. Can you hear us?
I can hear you now, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. So the question from the floor, which is terrific, is why this artificial separation between business and non-business pursuits when, as long as you're trying to get something done, it really is a business, right? Is that what's your sense there? And actually, I think Better World Books is a pretty good example of that, right?
Yeah, so you'd say it again, it was a business and non-business pursuit question? I missed a little bit of it.
Right, kind of why is there this artificial separation between business pursuits and non-business pursuits? When we're trying to get something done, we're trying to accomplish social impact, why isn't it all business?
Yeah, so you know, it's interesting. I'll give you, some real world examples. We would love to be able to provide more of our nonprofit partners and our clients greater back-end checks on the sale of the books, but there are costs involved in getting those books to market, including our software programming, reverse logistics, et cetera, right? So there's competing interests on being able to be sustainable and providing as much as you can to the mission. So again, you're trying to walk that balance to provide everything for all stakeholders. Yeah. From a non-business versus business pursuit, we just try to make the right decision on everything that comes across management's desk. From, do we offer carbon neutral shipping for our books? Well, carbon neutral can just be the cost of the book itself, or the carbon offset for the book shipment, or we could do the carbon offset for the entire corporation. So we've tried to track everybody's commute into work. We've tried to track everything that's done in the warehouse from an operational standpoint. And so now when we ship a book, it offsets fully a full carbon neutral all the way through all of our operations.
Excellent.
One of the points that Paul's making is really essential, and it gets to some of this issue of why we separate things. The business of the future, otherwise known as a B corporation, you like that? Understands that every single thing we do can make a difference in the world. Not just the product we make or the surface reason for the business to exist, but the carbon footprint of our distribution chain, how we use our human capital. At Redwoods, our folks spend 40 hours a year, a full week in service to community of business time. That's us using our human capital. We do probably 70,000 copies a year for Durham Public School teachers because shamefully they can't get adequate access to copiers, while we've got capital equipment lying fallow that we can kind of support with. There are all kinds of ways of doing this, but I want to introduce the concept of the hybrid corporation. There are an awful lot of B corporations and other corporations that have foundations. And so sometimes the foundation is meant to further the commercial interest of the company, right? So Avon is a big financial philanthropic investor in women's breast cancer research. Now, every dollar that Avon gives is hugely important and does good work. But what's the most important health interest of their target customer, right? It's breast cancer. And so that alignment works, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But there are deeper things that can happen. So at Redwoods, we understand we can do only so much by teaching lifeguards to do a better job watching the water. What would be the best way to keep all kids everywhere from drowning? Teach them to swim. Right, so it took you 11 seconds to figure that out. It took us 17 years, right? So we've now become a backbone organization in a countrywide effort to teach every kid in America to swim by the time they finish second grade. And we'll get that done, right? And that doesn't happen by the weekend, but that's the kind of work that happens. Now, our foundation is involved with that. YMCA's all across the country are involved in that. Public school and private schools are involved in that all across the country. And there was a time when we said, well, this is what we're doing in our charitable work or our foundation work, but what we're doing in the business is, and now we've come to understand there's no separation. There are things you do off different platforms because you can, but it's all trying to serve that mission. Does that help a little bit? Maria, did we?
That's a great...
I think there's a growing alignment between the power of business and social cause.
You bet, particularly when the purpose of business is to attack and solve a social cause, right? So, thank you. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Thanks so much for coming. Really appreciate it. So I really love the controversial sound bites that you've left us with, so that business got us into the problems, business can get us out, and reframing the idea of profit in the for-profit and non-profit, that everything needs to have a profit to be financially sustainable. But I was wondering if each of you could speak a little more to the idea of excess profit as sort of a warning sign for mission drift. Is there, what would you say are the warning signs, the red flags that you might notice as you're starting your well-intentioned business and you're feeling like you're drifting away? So how can you tell that you're leaning towards excess profit if that wasn't your intention? How do you spot those signs?
Yeah, if I'm driving a new Porsche instead of an old Porsche. Maria, you want to take a shot at that?
I was going to say I've never really had that problem, but I do have an answer.
Paul, do you want to take a shot at that?
You want to repeat it?
Oh, I'm sorry. So, Michelle, right? Michelle's question was, how do you know when you're looking at excess profits and mission creep? In other words, where you're more focused on profit than you are on purpose.
Yeah, that's another good question. We have patient shareholders. One of the things that we've been blessed with is alignment with our shareholder group. So the first set of funding we got was from Good Capital, which was another B corporation, and they walked the walk. When they came in, they were aligned with us from a mission standpoint. So where we might get challenged on some of the decisions we make from traditional investment community partnerships, we haven't been with Good Capital. In fact, they've challenged us to have more storytelling of what we do with our mission. How do we increase mission? How can mission survive any exit the company has, whenever that is? So we've been lucky to have alignment
with our shareholders. So we haven't had, and we've had some of that. We have some of that all the time with profit creep versus our mission. But quite frankly, you know, we hadn't made a profit for the first 8 years of existence. So it was actually a little bit of the other, where we were still tweaking our model as to be sustainable, to make sure that we were there for the long haul, and we were trying to offset losses through our funding and through debt and through other things. So we just feel like we turned the corner about 3 years ago when we started becoming profitable, and we've been profitable since. So we have some of those debates about making sure our mission is optimal, as large as it can be. But for the first, you know, again, for the first 8 years of our existence, it was the opposite conversation. It was making sure that we were going to be sustainable over the long term. Yeah. And we've been, again, lucky to have the shareholder group that we have. Yeah, so the right kind of patient, mission-connected capital. Michelle, I'll tell you this, I think, and we have been blessed enough to face times when we've made a fair amount of money in our model, and we've given away, in a number of years, more than half of our profits to the kind of causes that we've described. I think that any business has to have a very, very robust moral and ethical business decision-making model, which says, what are the metrics we look at? How does our mission translate into those metrics? And how do we wrestle with these kinds of things? One of the things that happens when you experience financial success is offers to buy your business come from all over the place. And that's a great blessing, right? It's a wonderful thing, and there's nothing that's morally right or wrong about choosing one path or the other, so I'm not being judgmental, except if you choose the one path over the other in a binary mode, right? What makes the owner most wealthy, or what perpetuates the mission the most, if you don't think that the partner is right or you can trust the partner. So having a moral and ethical decision-making model that a lot of people in the organization are participating in brings a sunlight to the decision-making that is essential in being able to live by your values. So we are out of time, and I'll speak for Paul and for Maria and Bart, who's not here, to say thank you for having us, of course, but also thank you for your interest in this field. Absolutely. That you're sitting in this room means you are, Kathy and I were talking about this beforehand, you are one of the ripples that will carry powerful, positive social change through the world as you work through your careers. Thank you for all you will do. Yeah.